tracking the Penn State scandal now. Eric Macramella, our legal analyst, is here. Eric, welcome, and shed some light on this. What kind of an investigation? Where does this go? What kind of a road can it go down?
Hey, Jim and Scott. Well, this is, guys, I think it's more of a complex and sordid and multi-layered road that most people are not sort of making it out to be. I think there is a lot going in here, and Scott, I'm not sure that we're going to be seeing any Paterno statues, at least in the short term or maybe even the long term. The Attorney General came out today and she said that, look, Paterno is not the subject of this criminal investigation at this point in time. However, it remains open for Paterno to be have criminal charges laid against him, and that is charges of perjury and obstruction of justice. We don't know the extent of all the events and what he knew and didn't know, but we do know one thing. In the grand jury testimony, McQuarrie said that he went to Paterno and he told him that he saw a naked Sandusky sexually abusing a young boy in the showers. Paterno then turned around and went to his supervisor, which is Tim Curley, the athletic director, and he minimized that story. Now, whether it was intentional or not is not clear, but he said, quote, that he was doing something of a sexual nature. Now, that language is vague. And when you compare it to what actually happened, I'm not sure you could say reasonably it encompasses raping a 10-year-old boy in the shower. So maybe Paterno wasn't lying, but perhaps he was being evasive or indirect with the view of thwarting a possible criminal investigation at the time he spoke to his athletic director. That could give rise to a criminal charge for obstruction of justice. And if he lied, you'd be looking at perjury. But this is also based upon the facts as we have them now. Things could change. We can learn more. Sandusky worked there for a long time and knew Paterno for decades. So there may be more information that comes out. Apart from the criminal stream, there's also the civil stream. And guys, this is where it can get really sordid. The civil stream is where you sue for money. And it is open to any of the victims and the families of the victims to go after Paterno, Sandusky, Tim Curley, the athletic director, Gary Schultz, the vice president of Penn State, Spanier, who is the president of Penn State, and alleged negligence. That the university and Paterno knew that Sandusky was this kind of predator, but they didn't take adequate steps to protect the children and let the families know. And in doing so, they were negligent. And negligence is a thing that is most often kind of pled in these kinds of cases in court. So everybody, including Paterno, is open to a claim, a civil claim for negligence. And that is what the lawyers, all these guys will have their own lawyers, and they're telling that. The university, Penn State, is concerned about their liability. Paterno will be concerned about a civil liability, as will all the other actors. So right now for Paterno, and I've tweeted this and I've written about it and I've talked about it at length, unfortunately for him, it's just getting started. This isn't the end of it for Paterno.
Eric, a couple of questions, because our familiarity with U.S. civil law, I think, has more to do with the fallout in the O.J. trial, where he was found civilly responsible for the deaths of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman, but where he was acquitted on the criminal charges. Is it similar in this scenario that what the prosecution has to prove is different, right, in a civil case than in a criminal case? And number two, if Paterno dies because he's no spring chicken, is it his estate and therefore his wife or his kids or whoever who are then, caught up in the middle of all this?
I'll answer the second question first because that's a shorter answer. The answer is yes, the estate could be on the hook for Paterno's transgressions if he is found liable in a civil court. Number two, you're right. We're looking at two separate streams here. Like in the O.J. trial, O.J. was, there were criminal charges pressed against O.J. He was able to get off because the standard there to toss you in jail is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's kind of tough to make out. It's a really high standard. But when it comes to suing for money, that is the civil stream, it's just 51% basically. Are you guilty? But it's kind of a 51% situation. If I can show on a better than even basis that you should be liable, you will be liable. So the civil stream is easier to make that out. And that's why in the O.J. situation, the O.J. case, O.J. didn't go to jail. He wasn't found guilty of a crime, but the Goldman family was successful in suing him civilly because, again, that standard is lower. It's easier to make. And in this case here with Paterno, it's quite possible that there won't be any criminal charges laid against Paterno. Now, I'm saying it's possible. As I said before, it's also possible that we'll learn more and he may be subject to a criminal charge or two. But let's say there are no criminal charges against Paterno. It's still open to the families to sue Paterno for negligence. He knew there was this predator roaming around. They still gave him access after he retired, quote, retired in 1999. He was still provided access to the team facility. He could still kind of hang around. They even gave him a Penn State email. So the question is, the parents say, wait a minute, you mean you knew about him, you knew what he was capable of, but you didn't protect our kids. You're negligent. So it's open to these families to come after Paterno, but when you sue someone like this, you don't just sue one person, Scott. You go after everybody. You go after all the employees that were kind of part of this, and that will include the vice president of the university, and that will include the president of the university, all of which had knowledge of this.
Eric, I want to go back to something you said earlier. It's a tough question to ask, so the words might not be clear. So I'm going to put some thought into it. When you were saying that Joe Paterno sort of softened his story about what happened, it almost suggests that some activity was somewhat acceptable to somebody and a lot of activity wasn't. I mean, the whole scene, just the fact that there's a guy in the shower with a kid is disgusting.
It is. Here's what happened. A 10-year-old boy was raped in the shower by an adult male. When that was communicated to Paterno, and he relayed that story to his supervisor, according to grand jury testimony, he said that Sandusky was, quote, doing something of a sexual nature. That's not the same thing. You can try and characterize an event in, sort of ambiguous language perhaps, but that statement about doing something of a sexual nature doesn't encompass raping a 10-year-old boy in the shower.
Well, still, though, they should have called the cops. That tells you right there. He should. If you hear that a 60-year-old man is having some degree of sexual relations with a 10-year-old, regardless of what it is, call the police right away.
Exactly. And that's why, in all likelihood, you will either see a lawsuit for negligence or they will settle. This kind of case, the university will want to settle because this doesn't go to trial because no one wins with that. The university is going to lose. If you're a coach like Paterno and you're seen as this like fiduciary, that means you're someone in a position of power and you oversee people that are vulnerable, you have a duty. You have a duty to step in. And if I tell you that I suspect something inappropriate has happened, you have to step in. If I tell you I saw a grown man raping a 10-year-old child, this is not something that's up for debate.
Yeah.
And that's why these parents are going to say, you were negligent. How did you not report this? How did you let him hang around? Why did you give him an email address? It doesn't make sense.
Wow, this is really bad. Eric, I wish we had more time. Thanks very much for stopping by. I'm sure we're going to have more talks on this.